Hello and welcome to everyone to the another inspiring episode of Tech Talks with IEEE Canada, stories that inspire change. My name is Inderpreet and I am privileged to be serving as IEEE podcast lead for IEEE Canada. This podcast is a unique initiative of IEEE Canada, created to spotlight outstanding professionals whose journeys, leadership, innovation, and contribution are shaping the future of engineering, technology, research, and of course, of society. Our theme, Tech Professionals Bold Journey, Real Impact, reflects our commitment of sharing stories that inspire students, young professionals, researchers, and future leaders around the world. Before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I am joining from Toronto, Ontario, which is situated on traditional territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Mississaugas of Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We are grateful for the opportunity to live, learn, and work on the lands, and we recognize the importance of reconciliation through education, inclusion, and meaningful collaboration. The title of today's episode is AI in Medicine for Global Health Transformation. And today it's my great pleasure and honor to Dr. Pascal Tyrrell. Dr. Pascal is an accomplished scientist, researcher, educator, and entrepreneur. He serves as Director of Data Science in University of Toronto with the Medical Department of Medical Imaging at Temerty Faculty of Medicines. He also serves as Director of Equity, Diversity, Indigeneity, Inclusion, and Accessibility within the Institute of Medical Science and is an Associate Professor in the Department of Statistical Sciences. In addition, he is an affiliate scientist at Shaw's Remens Institute of Technology and Society, where his work bridges technology, ethics, and society. He is recognized as Community Engaged Learning Faculty Fellow. His research focuses on applying artificial intelligence, that is AI, to medical image analysis, advancing healthcare innovation, and improving health outcome worldwide. Beyond academia, Dr. Tyrrell is also a successful entrepreneur with an experience spanning computer software, medical devices, and agri-tech. Dr. Pascal, it's truly an honor to welcome you to Tech Talks with IEEE Canada. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure being here and you hosting me. Thank you.
Dr. Pascal, to begin our conversation, could you please share your professional journey and what inspired you to work at the intersection of, artificial intelligence, medicine, and particularly with the focus on global health?
Sure, my pleasure. I think we could probably have a whole talk about my journey, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it brief. But absolutely, I'd love to be able to say I planned this, and I really did not. And so, probably the best way to describe, my journey was one that was nonlinear. So, love to think, I planned this ahead, but I didn't. I just kind of did what I loved, and I enjoy learning. And so when I started out, which was in the world of biostatistics, clinical epidemiology, data, enjoying data, it just slowly kind of morphed over time. And I was just very lucky, just to say, when I started in the world of medical imaging, for instance, that was at the beginning of big data, right? And so at the time, big data was a thing, and they needed data scientists to deal with it. And so then that was my job. But then very soon after, it slowly kind of, transformed into, artificial intelligence. So big data was kind of feeding artificial intelligence. And because I took an interest early on in my statistics in what's called, unsupervised learning or cluster analysis, that became part of artificial intelligence, I was kind of drawn into it. And so, as I said, very lucky that what I was taking an interest in early on turned out to be something really cool today, to have tools. And so that's really my journey is I just followed what I enjoy, and what motivated me to do my work. And I was very lucky that it turned out to be a good place to be in, or a good field to be in. That's probably the best way for me to describe my journey. I know for a lot of people, I'm asked all the time, what should we do? What should I do? How do I make up my mind? And honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with doing what you enjoy, clearly, because then, you're happy to be at work, and so you're happy to work hard. So that's very good. You do need to be mindful of what environment you're in, and where you're working and where you're spending your time. But ultimately, I think that really is what drove me, is doing something that I enjoy. And as I said, I'll say it again, I say it often, I was just very lucky that what I enjoy doing became a thing, right? So I think that's probably the easiest way to describe my journey.
But an inspiring journey. In fact, we are lucky that you are part of our podcast, and thank you for sharing your passion evolved into meaningful work. Though it's lucky journey that is improving life across the globe. Dr. Pascal, artificial intelligence is transforming healthcare at a very, very fast pace. So from your perspective, what do you see as most transformative role of AI in modern medicine, and how is it reshaping the global healthcare delivery system today?
Sure, great question, and one that can be answered in so many different ways. But the way I'm going to answer it is obviously through my lens of what I think AI will be most impactful for. Because if you ask, 10 scientists like me, you'll get 10 different answers, right?
Yeah.
But in my case, really and that's the reason I went into global health later in my career, was just because I saw AI becoming a tool that would inevitably, what we would call democratize, right? So make available to everybody all of this expertise, because as you know, in medicine, it's very hierarchical, or it was. I mean, it's improving, but back not too long ago, it was very hierarchical, and and it was this power. If you were in the a medical professional, you held this power, and then that, of course, led to inequality, right? And so that's what I think AI is really going to make a big impact, is that it's going to provide tools to not only improve the delivery of care, but more importantly, to increase the access to care. Because I think that's the tricky bit, is if you have few experts, because it takes a lot of time and effort and money actually to train an expert, what happens then, of course, is that those experts are not necessarily available to everyone. And so AI, if you provide AI as a tool, those tools are much more cost effective, right? Because the training of AI, once it's done, it's done. You have the software. And so then you can use those tools to improve access to care in, let's say, those countries that are not as privileged as we are here in North America or in Canada, for receiving such wonderful healthcare. And so I really do believe that's going to be the biggest impact of AI on healthcare, is that. I'd love to say it's because, we're going to create this unbelievable diagnostic tool that's going to diagnose that extremely rare cancer. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of impact, how many people does that actually impact? Well, it's much fewer than if you create like a screening tool for, breast cancer, let's say, or for infectious, disease and stuff, that is then can be deployed in what we call low middle income countries that don't have the money to support their healthcare in their communities. So I think that's truly the impact that I see as important for AI in healthcare. Yeah.
That's fascinating perspective. Out of the trends perspective, as you said, it's exciting to see how AI is becoming a powerful partner in terms of tools in improving the healthcare outcomes. So your answer and my next question is almost same. So one
Mhm.
of the greatest promises of AI is its ability to improve healthcare access. How can AI help healthcare gaps in low resources community? I know you have already shared it,
Mhm.
including the indigenous and remote population. So my concern is about the remote population and what challenges still need to be addressed to ensure equitable global health outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's the challenge and the joy of
Mhm,
being able to work with AI.
mhm,
Is that it's amazing what it can do, and everybody is seeing that because they have a cell phone, a smartphone, and they have
mhm,
access to all the LLMs that are coming out, and everyone's going, "Wow, this is amazing." Well, you'll be surprised, or
mhm,
maybe not, to hear that no matter where you are in the world, most people have access to a smartphone. So
mhm,
so then our surprise and disbelief at AI is everywhere. So even if you're working in a low middle income country,
mhm,
everybody has a smartphone, and so everybody has access to AI, and everyone's appreciating AI. So then the step that we have to take is, how do we leverage this AI in order to help the delivery of care? So that was your question. And
mhm,
so really, the first thing is strategy, right? So it's adoption, right? So meaning that the communities need to welcome the use of AI
mhm,
in their community. And you'd be surprised, that's actually a very big barrier. And the reason for that is, I'll just give you a really easy example. So
mhm,
let's say here in Canada, you every 2 years you go for a mammogram, and you check for breast cancer,
mhm,
and that's a screening process, right? And that is around the world, right? So we do this around the world.
mhm,
The problem, though, is in lower middle income countries, the ability for that mammogram to be read by a radiologist and to say, "Oh, there's something of concern here, and we need to escalate," is just not like it is here. So here, when you get it done within a couple of weeks minimum, you get an answer. So fine. But unfortunately, in lower middle income countries,
mhm,
sometimes it can take 6 months to a year for you to get that
mhm,
radiologic report back. So if you adopt AI, there's an error involved, and that is inherent to training AI, because it is trained on us, the experts.
mhm,
And so inevitably, unless you have 100% accurate algorithms, there is an error, right? And
mhm,
so for the healthcare system, that whatever country you're in, they
mhm,
need to make that decision. Are they willing to accept that error? So let's say 92% accurate, right? There's
mhm,
an 8% error based on, the best expert. And
mhm,
so as a community, you have to say, "Oh, is that, can we do that?" Because a lot of people will say, "Well, I don't want to be misdiagnosed," right? I mean, that's
mhm,
a big risk. So that's the biggest barrier. And of course, the answer to that is, it's cost effective to do so, because it's much better for anyone who's been screened for breast cancer to
mhm,
get an answer back that may be 8% error, but immediately, as soon as it comes off the scanner, as opposed to waiting a year and then
mhm,
finding out after a year that they do have cancer and it has progressed over the last year. What? That's terrible, right?
mhm,
So that's the decision that has to be made by governments, and that's, for instance, something I'm doing with the government of Costa Rica, in deciding, can we implement AI in such a way that it's beneficial to everybody in the community? And we've
mhm,
shown that it is. And so there's an easy example, that if we use AI as a screening tool, it will make mistakes, absolutely.
mhm,
However, they'll be caught because they'll be scanned again, right?
mhm,
And also, of course, everybody gets scanned immediately. Everybody's scan gets read immediately,
mhm,
and then the ones that are problematic get pushed to the radiologist, and there's few of them, right, in the public system. And
mhm.
so, anyway, so there's an example of how AI can be very impactful, right, to the communities, and you said specifically in the indigenous communities, of course, they go through the same screening, so they'll have the same issues, but access to care for them is even harder because they're in remote locations. So I'll just touch on that. A lot of the AI is extremely heavy, right? So technologically, and we're in the IEEE, so everybody here knows, it's very heavy, it's very dense, it's very difficult to run on a cell phone without a connection to the cloud, right?
Yes.
And so there's a tricky bit. And so in the indigenous communities, very often, there is no signal. So I think that's the next fun is going to be peripheral AI. So edge AI, what they call edge, right? Edge computing. And that is, can you run something locally, off? So I call it offline first, right? So meaning, can you run a lighter algorithm offline, out there, rural, when you're doing an assessment? And then when you come back, to a more central location, you have a signal, then it gets reprocessed, but with a heavier algorithm in the cloud. So then you have the best of both worlds. So that's called offline first. And that's certainly, I think, another area that's going to be very helpful in the rural communities or those communities that don't have access to the cloud. They will still benefit from AI, which is wonderful because you can build these algorithms they do a little less. They're not as heavy or they're not as accurate, but they're used right on your tablet or right on your phone with the healthcare professional or whoever is going out into the community. So it's still beneficial, which is wonderful that AI is going to be useful at all levels. So there you go. There's an example of.
Wow. Thank you for highlighting that, especially the strategies with the government. Technology has its greatest impact when it improves lives and create opportunity for everyone. And innovation must always be accompanied by responsibility. So, Dr. Pascal, as AI becomes increasingly integrated with clinical decision making, how do we balance innovation with ethical responsibility, patient safety, transparency, and bias mitigation?
Yeah, wow. There's another podcast episode, right? But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We do need to be cautious because it is an extremely powerful tool. And with that, I think the challenge is the rapidity of the innovation and of the improvement and the progress. That in itself is the danger, right? So what we do need to do is slow it down a little bit. So very often in medicine, including myself, we'll complain all the time. We'll say, regulatory slows us down and it takes forever to go through all these studies and we can't get through the FDA or Health Canada. We whine and complain. But there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is actually it slows everybody down, which is a good thing because then it's, you discover, whoops, we find out that, that didn't really work as well, or that was a bit of a hazard, right? So that's a good thing. And it also trickles down to the problem of bias. So you touched on it. And so depending on where the algorithm has been trained, there's going to be inevitably an inherent bias. And so right now, the largest pools of data are in North America, China. Those are massive pools of data. So a lot of training in those areas. But unfortunately, for instance, when I work in Costa Rica, well, how generalizable is my algorithm that I designed here and trained on data from here in Costa Rica? Well, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that, look at that. There's a loss of performance in my algorithm when I deploy it in Costa Rica. So there's a classic problem of inequity and bias that, it's the privileged countries that are designing and developing all these algorithms, which is wonderful. And then when they share, but usually by selling, but whatever, into, populations that are outside of theirs, it doesn't work as well. And so that's not fair. So that's what you touched on is bias and fairness. And so that's something that needs to be addressed. And it's only by slowing down the process and the FDA or Health Canada, saying, hey, did you think of this? That we are going to get to where we want to go because it's very important. And so, for instance, retraining the algorithm or recalibrating the algorithm in the local environment is crucial, right? So yes, wonderful. You have an algorithm, fantastic. But before you deploy it, test it, and make sure that it works well in the community you're deploying it in. So when you ask that question, that's the purpose of the bias and the fairness, making sure that what you're deploying is equitable to all the communities, so generalizable for the statistical term. And then you also touched on a little bit of the ethics and responsible AI. So absolutely, same thing. Is it fair? How did you obtain the data, right? So did you poach it? Because that's not fair. That's not responsible AI. So you do need to be careful on that one as well. So not only make sure there's no bias in your data set, so it's fair and it's generalizable, but also be careful where you got the data and was it ethical? So did you obtain the data with consent from the people that provided it? That's been a huge area of debate and problematic. For instance, even the GPTs, right? The chat GPTs, they were accused of like, where'd you get that data? And now it's too late. It's done. It's trained. And so that's wrong, right? And so yes, it happened, but we're aware of it, and so moving forward, it needs to be controlled essentially, and that's what that progression of regulatory, which AI will come under. It should do anyway. I'm pretty sure it's coming, but it will come under a regulatory body, just like drugs or medical devices. AI will come under its own, I believe, its own regulatory body. We're just waiting for the lawmakers of all the different countries to catch up with all of this. But eventually, that's probably what's going to happen, and that will be exactly will be part of that. Is going to be where'd you get the data? How did you get it? Was it ethical? Is it unbiased? All that fun stuff. How about that?
Oh, wonderful. Those are extremely important insights, and thank you for sharing that. Dr. Pascal, responsible AI is essential to building the trust in healthcare system. No doubt in that. So my next question is, every successful professional reaches moments that require courage. So could you share one bold decision in your career that significantly shaped your professional journey or research impact?
Wow. Okay. So so an example of why I kind of made this change, I guess, or deviation. Is that right? That's interesting. I think for me, it was, there wasn't one big moment. It was just progressively. So let me give you, first of all, a perspective from me. So all data scientists, around the world, when we were data scientists many, many years ago, we were, you could consider us as in the basement, right? So, who came to us? Well, it was almost, and I work with the Ontario Dentistry Associations, Dentist Association. So, but I'm going to make this comparison. I know it's a bit harsh, but it's a little bit like going to the dentist, right? So, not everybody likes going to the dentist. Actually, not many people like going to the dentist. So going to see a statistician or going to see a data scientist was the same thing, right? It was, I got to go see them to get the analysis done and get the p-value, and then we'll publish, right? But so we were in the basement. So when AI kind of picked up and big data and AI came up, now we're on the top floor, because whoa, everybody wants AI. So that perspective is kind of where you're empowered, right? And so when I was empowered, so to speak, with my work, I kind of started thinking, well, not super fair for everybody, and that's how it started. And I was very lucky. In my first startup, I ended up going to Costa Rica for business, for Ontario to represent the province. And I met a whole bunch of people there, and I met people in the university because obviously I'm an academic. And that's how I got connected with Costa Rica. So once again, just a chance happening that was wonderful. But when I did, obviously, it was so glaring, the difference between what's available here and what's available there, and how they benefit and how we benefit was so different. I think that was, a turning point for me, was understanding the delivery of care in Costa Rica, how different it was to here, and how lucky we are here. And so then, of course, with this new empowerment of my work, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I could actually contribute here to something that, to a community that really is in need, right? And so that was really neat. Don't get me wrong. I love the research here in Canada and finding really cool algorithms to do really cool things. Don't get me wrong, love it. But the application in Costa Rica is and actually I do now in India and South Africa. It kind of made sense to me that why not share this tool? Okay, last little thing is the simplicity. That's the piece that really got me, is because I have a particular interest in heterogeneity and data heterogeneity. But the complexity is interesting, but I really like this simplicity of solutions. So I dig into complexity of data, sure, but I also really like simple solutions that are so effective and so impactful. So it's so silly to think on how basic a tool, and this offline first tool on your smartphone, how much of an impact it can have in a community that doesn't have this healthcare we do. And so I love that. I was just like, look at that. I'm doing such basic algorithms that most people go, oh, you're doing what? That's so simple, And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point, right? And so that really attracted me. Is what we call implementation research. So, right, so how do you actually get it out there and working, even if it's a super simple solution? That was attractive for me.
Simple and innovative. Yeah. And that's wonderful lesson for sharing us your progressive movement, especially the delivery of care. Sometimes our biggest opportunity, come from taking the thoughtful risk. This podcast celebrates real impact. Could you please share I know you have already discussed this. It is again a repetitive of the things. My question is where you can share your project, research initiative, or innovation where you have witnessed measurable impact through AI in healthcare and global transformation. Though you have already answered it with your project. Yeah.
No, I'll give you a fun. I'm going to give you a fun experience. How about that? So we put together an app called Pura, because in Costa Rica you say pura vida, pure life. So it's an expression to say, hey, pure life, right? So pura vida. So we called our app that. And it's only for the indigenous communities. It's not shared. They don't want us to share it. And we went there with an algorithm, like we thought, oh, this is really cool, and it's to identify plants. And the reason you go, oh, well, so what, Well, for us, the reason for it was to help the indigenous communities, retain their culture and their use of medicinal plants. So what's called phytotherapy. Right. So they use these plants all the time. And actually, it's really big in other countries, too. India, for instance, massive on this. Right. So the use of plants for therapy is a thing. Right. So we thought, hey, why don't we put together this app offline? It can identify the most important plants for their medicines. Right. So there's not that many, and then they'll teach their younger generations, and everything's gonna be wonderful. And so, we went down there and I worked in the community with the leaders and all that. And they were like, oh yeah, this is great. Sure, we'll use that. But literally, I think it was 2 days. I was in Costa Rica. It was 2 days before we went into the community. I was working with my developers, and I said, you know what? One of the other problems is their language, right? So not everybody knows, Naberi, which is one of the languages of the indigenous communities. And so why don't we put together this really basic dictionary, like just word lookup, because we had a few words that were in their language, Naberi, and then we put it with English and Spanish. And we literally it almost looked like a spreadsheet. It was so basic. It was just silly, right? So we go in and then we say, oh, by the way, we put in this really basic dictionary lookup word thing for you, so that when you're working with somebody or whatever, and you can't think of a word, just look it up, and then you there you go, right? And as soon as we showed it to them, they that's it. That's the only thing they were interested in. Period. That was it. Because it was such a need for them to, perpetuate their culture and their language, most importantly, that they immediately said, oh my God, that's we want that, yes, the planet identifier. Oh, great. Thank you for bringing, but more importantly, we really need this for our language to teach, the language to our younger generation. And so within like 2-3 days, we then improved, the look of it and the feel of it. And we had pictures and now we're going to gamify it and all that. So it's kind of, so there's the story, how funny it is that this unexpected kind of wow that was being, facilitated by AI. And you're going to say, well, that's just a word lookup. Yeah, but think of it. What we're working on are called small language models. So instead of the large language models, they're small language models because they're very reduced. And specifically because it's a relatively undocumented language. And so for us to be able to do what we want to do with it, we're leveraging all the latest and greatest in AI and NLP and all that fun stuff. So there's an example of how the technology is being leveraged for something that was completely unexpected, but really needed. So there's the impact. So once again, so silly, right? I mean, it was completely unexpected, and you think, oh God, it's just a dictionary. Who cares? But it's actually it's really impactful. So who could have figured that out, right? So now it's being deployed all throughout the indigenous communities in Costa Rica to help teach the language. And as I said, we're going to gamify. I'm going down this summer, and we're going to gamify it. And so the kids will be able, almost like flashcards, right? So you look up words and pictures and you say, is that the right, what in which language and all that kind of stuff. So really nothing spectacular, but very impactful for them. That's, for them, that was extremely important. Of course, the medicinal plants as well, of course, but that's, the language for them was more important.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Dr. Pascal, that's a remarkable example of technology creating such a meaningful change for individuals and communities. Really happy to listen that. Professional communities like IEEE has played an important role in advancing innovation globally. So how has your involvement with IEEE or other professional communities supported collaboration, knowledge sharing, and your ability to create real world impact in AI and in healthcare?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Or actually, more of a statement, I guess. But you're right. I think definitely the advantage, especially IEEE, is really community for sure. Like I think that's the first one. Is definitely community, and then the other one is kind of this it provides a standard for a group all the way around the world, right? So instead of you just having to connect with people in your institution and saying, this is how we're going to do things, this is what we think is important, and it's only in your institution. That's what the IEEE, I think, provides, is this kind of immediate worldwide group that you're part of, which is, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I think that's what is in my opinion, can be leveraged the most from that, and from any kind of organization like it, is this ability to, contribute to a group and say, hey, I think this is what we should be doing as a group. And that just makes it more impactful around the world, as opposed to having all these disparate groups, which then you get ranking, which is just terrible, right? So this group's better than that group, and that's terrible, right? Whereas IEEE, that's not the case, right? It's like that all over the world. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage I see to being part of the IEEE, and the benefits from it. That's how I benefit from it. Put it that way.
Thank you, Dr. Pascal, for emphasizing the importance of collaboration, especially the community providers. Innovation grows stronger when we work together across disciplines, across communities. So our conversation today has highlighted not only the transformative role of AI in medicine, global health, but also the importance of responsible innovation, equity, and collaboration. So before we wrap up, let's switch gears for a moment with one of my favorite segment of the podcast, the rapid fire round. I will I will ask you questions, short questions, and we would love to hear the first thought that comes to your mind.
Sure.
Shall we get started?
Absolutely.
So one word that defines your journey in AI in medicine.
Adaptable. That's definitely.
Who and what has been your biggest inspiration?
I'm going to say healthcare, the actual healthcare professionals. So yeah, healthcare professionals. Frontline. How about that? Frontline. One word. Frontline. How about
Oh,
that?
wow. One technology that you believe will redefine global health over next decade.
Oh, I already gave you that one. Edge computing.
Oh, okay. That you told like offline,
Yes,
right?
I mentioned it in a previous answer,
You didn't say
but
that.
what I would say, the tech that's going to redefine global health, I think, is edge computing. Yeah.
Okay. One healthcare challenge that the world must urgently solve.
Okay, one word. Access. How
Okay.
about that? So what I mean by that is currently the divide, the digital divide, that who has, who
Right.
doesn't, right? So access. How about that? Access. Yeah.
Perfectly. Your personal success mantra
Oh, for one word, learning. Easy.
is
Never stop learning.
your best advice for young researchers entering AI and healthcare.
So there's a two-word thing, but I could, if you want a one word, it's curious. How about that?
Mhm.
But for the two word is ask questions. And it's funny, I get accused, especially my wife, all the time. She's constantly saying, you ask too many questions, right? Because everything I do, I'm like, I'm asking this, I'm asking that. She's like, oh my God, you're always asking questions. But it's because I'm curious, right? And I really, that would be my advice to the younger researchers.
One a bold prediction for future of global health.
Bold prediction for one word, eh? Universal. How about that? One word. So universal. So of course, what I'm referring to is universal access, and yeah, I would say universal access. Yeah, for sure. So meaning the specialist is in your phone. Where's my phone? The specialist is here. You actually, you have access. You don't have to, wait 6 months and, or wait 2 years, or you never have access. So I would say, yeah, universal. How about that? So we're going to get there. We will get there. I don't know when, but we'll get there.
Wonderful. Thank you for your thoughtful and inspiring responses. Finally, what message would you like to leave with our listeners, especially students, young professionals, and aspiring researchers who dream of transforming their ideas into meaningful innovation and creating lasting impact through technology? What message you want to give?
I would say, what a wonderful time to be who you are. I can't say that enough to the younger researchers, because a lot of them, when they come in, they talk to me about, the lay of the land and what's going on, and very often they say they're anxious. They're very concerned, and there's so much change, and they don't know, they can't keep up, and they don't know what's next, and they don't know where it's going to be right and what's going to be wrong and what's going to be successful. And I always just say, wow, lucky you. What a wonderful time to be you, because it's going to be so much fun, and there's going to be so much to learn and so much to do. And yeah, of course, there'll be some bad stuff. Of course, I mean, like everything, you learn from your mistakes. That's okay. But what a fantastic time to have the opportunity. So, my advice to you is hang on, like just jump in and hang on, like go for the ride. Don't let it go by. Don't let it go by. Get into it. I can't say that enough, for sure.
That's truly an inspiring message and a wonderful way to conclude today's conversation. Dr. Pascal, on behalf of IEEE Canada and entire IEEE community, I would like to sincerely thank you for taking the time to join us today. Your insights on artificial intelligence, global health, responsible innovation, equity, and leadership have been incredibly valuable. We truly appreciate your willingness to share not only your technical expertise but also the experiences and the values that have guided your remarkable journey. And I'm confident our listeners, especially students, young professionals, researchers, innovators, will be inspired by your story and encouraged to pursue technology that serves humanity. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining us. for another episode of Tech Talks with IEEE Canada, stories that inspire change. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe the IEEE Canada YouTube channel. We will continue bringing you inspiring conversation with global leaders in engineering, technology, research, and innovation. Until next time, keep learning, keep innovating, keep inspiring, keep enjoying. I am Dr. Inderpreet, your host. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Dr. Pascal.
Thank you. Absolute my pleasure to be here and to contribute.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.